What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Brandfathers podcast. I'm in one of the original places here. I am in the collab lab, y'all. No, the infamous Bima is right here over my shoulder, making sure that I got my studio upgrade. My guy,
What's going on? I'm back. I'm back for like 2 seconds.
he's back, baby. We couldn't talk him into being here today. He's got plenty of other things. He's got
He was
the
gushing
entire
about the
studio.
AE2 off screen.
Yeah,
So
he's actually in there sketching the AE2 after napalming all of Adidas HQ.
With love.
Yes,
With love.
flamethrower out at James Harden.
I love you, Adidas. No,
it's
no
a love
shade.
thrower, not a
Just
flamethrower,
passion.
you know?
It's just a lot of
It's just-
passion.
It's just passion and fire, indeed. All right, y'all. Well, broadcasting live from the Collab Lab. Today, we're going to talk about the future of agencies and the evolving agency landscape. So first, we're going to give you an introduction to what agencies actually are, to the traditional agency format and model, some of our favorite agencies and famous work out there that we've noted, and then of course, there's some big notable mergers and the evolving landscape of agencies coming up, and then where we think our predictions of what a successful agency model would look like and how you could intersect with that or get opportunities there. But before we jump into agencies, we are going to talk about some of the notable marketing and branding from this week. Gents, welcome.
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
All right.
Yeah, I can
What's,
feel the Portland energy through the screen.
You feel
know
it?
what I'm saying? Like, I just,
I've got a,
We feel
got a
it
fresh,
heavy back in your Nike roots.
yeah.
that's right. Fresh,
I feel like you even
fresh.
have like a Pacific Northwest color correction, like happening. You know what I mean? It's got that, it's like washed out.
There is.
Rainy, sad.
I am washed out. I told Beam I'm a little lighter, a little fairer skin than his. We had to turn the light down a little bit, but it's I'm loving the purple. I love the what is this? The beige. We share our love of purple. But we've got some happenings this week in marketing, and we got to talk some of these things. We've got Amex. Ashwinn has actually created a spec ad for Hoka's new race shoe. Orka, water flavored energy drinks. We've got Kava, Sweetgreen, Starbucks, and of course SKIMS. Gents, where should we start?
Let's start with Ashwin's Hoka ad. I enjoyed the spec ad work. Brother, you want to give a little breakdown of what happened there?
Yeah, so I got a pair of Hokas sent to me in the mail, which I thought was a complete surprise until Jordan told me, I told you multiple times that the team at Hoka would be sending you shoes. You just don't pay attention and comprehend the things properly, which is
Well,
accurate.
that's also not even the full. Like literally, like 4 days beforehand, I was like, "Hey, those Hokas that we got sent from Jordan's people, like here's my complete breakdown of how they impacted my run." But Ashwin's head is so in the game; he's so deep in copy, he has no
He's so
idea
locked
what's
in.
happening. You could approach
I'm,
him on
I'm,
the street,
I'm,
doesn't
I'm
know
so
what day.
locked in. I'm locked out of everything else.
He's so locked in. I got to tell you, Ashwin, it makes me feel better because that's generally how I operate throughout the world. So I feel great when you don't know what's going on because
I
I
also
feel
do
that
love that there
now
was like
love.
easily 3 hours where you have this aura of mystery, and you're like, "Wow, like this is sick. Like, is this part of a bigger campaign? Is there a conspiracy happening?" I enjoy that you got to experience that half a day. You know.
Yes.
Ashwin's Do Not Disturb was on, and he had this mystery package. A couple weeks before, we had talked about what's his name, who had the mystery Nikes on his door,
Yeah, Zachy.
and
Yeah, so I
Ashwin.
thought I was part of this elite running squad as someone who loves to run. I thought I was now on this list, but it just turns out Jordan had the hookup. So anyway, I get these sneakers. I go for a run in them. By the way, these are actually crazy shoes. You know, I probably did a 10-mile run in them. It felt kind of effortless. I was like running much faster than I've ever run before, and I felt completely fine after it. I will also note that it doesn't really feel like you can walk in them. It feels like you're going to fall over. Like they're really meant to be running. So I went for a long run in them, and as I run, that's where I have ideas for anything. Sometimes I feel like I should just like run all the time, and then like I just had this idea. I had this like headline in mind that said, "If you want to know what it feels like to be a nepo baby, go for a run in the Hoka Cielo X1." And so for the duration of my run, I'm kind of like thinking about this concept and like what parallel would I draw between the structural advantages that the shoe gives you as well as being a Nepo baby, because like, what is the connection between these two otherwise? So I thought there's like this interesting, when you can take two things that are so foreign or so far apart and try to find some like thread between the two, I think it just makes for an interesting ad. So I have long been a fan of Ogilvy ads and these like 60s, 70s style magazine advertisements. So I came home after that run, maybe typed this out in about an hour or so, and then I threw it up on Twitter as well as Instagram, and it performed quite well, both in terms of the views and engagement and how people are responding to it. So I had a little fun with this one.
Well, speaking of agency, we'll be talking about the shifting landscape, but maybe Hoka's ad agency needs to look to you to just dial up an Ogilvy ad real quick.
You know, I did tell Hoka, I said, hey, if you want to get some whitelisting on this, I think this could be fun to run as Facebook ads. And I think that is now in the abyss of, you know, the many agencies that probably run performance for Hoka, and it's unlikely they will do that.
Alex at Hoka, you hear this, Ashwinn, and he'll give you a very nice price, I'm sure, for the whitelisting, right?
I will. Just give me Cielo X1s every year for the rest of my life.
X1 2.0, just throwing it out there.
The 2.0.
I do enjoy the naming convention being like completely ridiculous. Is such a good trademark of the athletic industry.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you could give Anomaly, their agency, a run for their money on some of this stuff. So these carbon shoes.
The only good Hoka thing I remember, Hoka has two campaigns I remember. I watch every Hoka video. Because I just pay all attention to the activewear space. They have two ones that were good. They have one where a dude races a train in New York. It's like blah 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 is gonna race this train in the Hoka Mach 2, and he like pops out the subway as the car keeps going, and he races to the next station. That's a hot social video. And they had the other one was the ASMR video they did, right, where it's like the leaves crunching. I think we talked about this one on the pod. But I was like, those are two actually like genuinely good pieces of creative amongst a sea of like typical trash in the running community. So good for them.
Yeah, I mean, dude, they're making moves. They've done some really interesting stuff in NIL. That's where I got introduced to them. They had me out to speak to some of their high school runners at their cross country nationals that they did.
What are they doing in NIL? What's the strategy?
Yeah, so it was really, really smart. They're trying to, and they work within the rules, but essentially what they were trying to do was invite all these athletes, and whoever won, they would get an NIL deal. But I think what they did it within the rules, and it was the winners. They eventually then bought their rights to then put on like a billboard in New York and celebrated them in conjunction with Foot Locker. And so it was really cool. You know, if you're a high school athlete and you not only win the cross country tournament or the race, then you also get to see yourself on a big billboard in New York. Super, super cool. So I think they're doing really interesting stuff, and it's been fascinating to watch them evolve. I mean, I remember, you know, years ago, I'm always probably a little too cynical, and I'm like, oh, Hoka and On, what do they do? And they're not going to really make any space. I mean, dude, they're crushing. And I've been worried for years that big chunky sole, once that went out of style, that would, you know, create some headwinds for them. But I guess they've diversified enough, or people just can't get enough of this.
Well, it's also not really even about the style and the fact that like I had the same experience that Ashwinn did. Like I time all my runs. I'm pretty consistent. I'm like not trying to like get. I'm trying to shave a couple seconds off every month, right? On my average on a 6 mile, and I was 17 seconds faster every mile on a 6 mile in the Hokas, which is like a pretty significant decrease.
Yeah.
And so I do feel like whether, again, to Ashwin's point, I wouldn't want to walk down a flight of stairs in them, but like if it performs, I feel good. I have less pain in my legs than I usually do. That is a win no matter how it looks, straight up. Like if it's in style or not.
No, totally. And I mean, it does speak. I just think there's so often that you don't actually tangibly feel the results of like the innovation that so many of these companies are touting. And this technology that's been around now for a couple of years, this carbon plated marathon super shoe, is actually pretty incredible, and you know, really propels people forward.
All right, I want to transition into this Sweetgreen ad and talk about it real quick because it's kind of related in that, kind of like the Spec ad they had. So here's the thing: so Sweetgreen launched fries, and they're air fried, healthier fries, but they did a comparison ad to McDonald's that all of these marketers were talking positive about, and I like the concept, but to me it's one of those like, okay, they're positioning their fries as healthy. Is any human being who eats McDonald's fries, and which they're kind of putting on this left here, showing all the bad ingredients, switching to Sweetgreen to eat their fries. I just think it's one of those where like marketers like, this is so cool. I like the comparison. Obviously, lets people know that they're healthy, but like it's not converting any customers. So curious on y'all opinion on that.
I would say that even if you're a health nut, you remember the sweet nectar of McDonald's fries. So perhaps it's a bit of that nostalgia, and you're going, oh, I could get away with maybe stuff that I even left behind. Maybe now I can get it. And I would put myself probably squarely in that category. I mean, I don't.
Okay, I like that angle. So you saw this and you were like, I'm going to get myself some Sweetgreen air fried potato.
No, I mean, what I was actually, I had even a deeper question was like, when I go to Sweetgreen, I get like a delicious kale salad, with grilled chicken. I'm rarely thinking, and you know what I want on a side of my salad is a side of fries, which is just kind of random. Ashwin, what do you think?
Yeah, this is one of those things where I saw it making its rounds on Twitter. I saw it a little bit on Instagram, a little bit on LinkedIn. And the post that I saw, I think like came from kind of like people in marketing or advertising, but they all got like some traction. So I'm not sure if it like made it past that audience of people who kind of care about this. But at a very base level, I think what it did is Sweetgreen has entered this new category, or is like launch a product in a new category that they're not known for, and at least it's like registered to some number of people that they now have this product, leave aside the messaging. So I think, hey, the ad maybe like did its job in like getting some people's attention, saying like, hey, we're Sweetgreen, we now have fries. But yeah, I don't think it is the type of positioning that says, listen, as a kid, like I ate McDonald's fries all the time. As an adult, I still love fries. So this is kind of like appealing to me, but again, I'm not going to Sweetgreen to get fries. It just doesn't pair with a salad or even like a quinoa bowl.
But I will shout out to brands who are afraid of shouting out their competitors. This is a great way to do it, right? If you have a big enough competitor where their colors, or you can basically call them out this way, this is a nice way to be able to not have something by name. If you're positioning against something else, I thought this was a well done way to do it.
Well, totally agree.
Yeah, I also to go back on that point, I think there was some of this conversation when people were talking about Olipop and Poppy. They were like, oh, it was like so it was like not cool how like Olipop like showed up in the comments and was like instigating stuff, or like they kind of go head to head. And it's like, I don't know where this whole like line of thought came from that like you should never like go after like have friendly beefs or like even like less friendly beefs with like competitive products. Like I don't know, I don't ascribe to that. I think that good beef is good. Like do you remember like the infamous like Apple versus Mac ads? I mean Apple versus Microsoft ads from back in the day, those were like iconic, and I think we need more good beefs.
Agreed.
Amen. I'm with it. And this is why we've announced that the Brand Brothers are signing on to help with Drake's repositioning here in this year of our Lord 2025.
After tanking his credibility, just promoting gambling apps endlessly.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and shout out to Steak for sponsoring this episode of if you want to ruin your life, Steak.
Yes.
We should have a little banner here of all of the logos of brands that just ruin people's lives.
Free $100 your first bet. The devil will be the first one for free.
Yeah. Thanks, Bill Simmons. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Bill Simmons, everyone, the whole industry. How long will y'all will know that the Brand Fathers have sold out when we have our first gambling sponsorship.
I know it's one of those scenarios like I would never take that check, and they're like, "Here's the check," and you're like, "Amalfi Coast."
Bro, I will say I've turned down a few different. We all turn down deals for different reasons, but so far I've held out on the sports gambling.
On the sports gambling, yeah. Let's go Saudi Arabia and sports gambling. It's inevitable, but we're holding out for now while we're still young and independent. It'll be a good segue to agencies in a minute. I do want to talk about, I forget who shared this in the chat, but I absolutely loved it. One of my favorite topics. David's Bridal transitioning into a media company.
Yeah, let's pull that one up. Yes, the headline.
David's Bridal, noted purveyor of bridal.
Yeah, a noted retail provider of accessible bridal accessories for men and women, dresses, suits, all of that stuff. Have been around forever. Saw this headline that they are transitioning to a media company, which I don't understand. Even upon further investigation, I don't understand the play outside of the high level conversation is like everything is media now, everything is marketing and your ability to capture attention. And so at its extreme, some companies are just like, hey, well, we're going to go do that. We're just going to go become this media company. Who knows what they're going to do? Launch the Bridal podcast. Maybe it'll work for them. But hilarious nonetheless.
And so when they say becoming a media company, does that mean that when I hear that, I go, okay, they're going to make the majority of their money from media? And is that kind of the take that we have here?
The brides are evolving and we're evolving with her. Kelly Cook, David's incoming CEO, told CNBC. That is some of the most classic C-level statement that you can find. Oh my God.
Yeah, the grooms are evolving and we're evolving with them.
Emerged from its second bankruptcy. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are they? Yeah, let's see what they're doing here.
Well, I assume the bankruptcy is they're like holding stock of wedding dresses, which is sort of like probably not the best business model.
Yeah. Second woman in the company's 75-year history.
So we already sell about a third of wedding dresses in the United States. The bridal side is who we are. All that's being added through a drop ship marketplace model allows us to add vendors very quickly. So they're basically saying, cool, come to davidsbridal.com. We have SEO, but you ship your own products. So we don't hold inventory. Thus, we're not going to go bankrupt again. Not the worst idea.
Well, they also
Currently, 90% of inventory manufactured by themselves. Damn.
they have this thing, this Pearl Media network. This is very interesting. David's Bridal acquires wedding media brand Pearl Media to create the ultimate inspiration network. So maybe they're just trying to make TV shows.
Yeah, so basically they're just saying we're going to add video into our marketing, but become a media company is the PR play. But this is interesting because we had a bridal photographer, this guy Lensel, in Cut 30 a while ago, and his content just murdered it. And he was and I found it really interesting. And like the whole angle was like, hey, we want to create like bride savable, bride shareable content about good wedding photography. Here's different styles. Here's different angles. Here's what to ask for. Here's the themes. Here's what's happening in a wedding this week. And it was just one of those where I was like, oh, the hyper engagement here. And then also how good the algorithms are. The way algorithms are good at local, that algorithm knows if you've got a wedding coming, sister. Let me tell you, they are going to hammer you. They got that sales method knocked down. And so I do think that there is a extremely good captive audience for good content in that niche.
Absolutely.
We'll see if David's Bridal is able to go into it. What else should pivot to media companies? What other should Men's Warehouse be transitioning to a style blog?
Men's Warehouse should potentially.
Your local plumbers, your local HVAC.
This is another thing I was talking about. A friend of ours got a vintage couture wedding dress, and it was one of those where there's actually no reason to ever buy a new wedding dress ever again. Enough wedding dresses exist in the world from David's Bridal backstock, from every major designer, from every major thing. They get worn once or whatever that looks like, or they worn a few times. A friend of ours, when we were really young, got hers at a thrift store and just got it tailored. It was a really nice dress. And that's what happens. You have to get it all tailored and everything anyway. Obviously, there's an experience there, but that's one of those things where you could just say, we're never going to produce another one. And there's already all this amazing couture and things out there to get customized. I don't know, just throwing it out there.
Oren, is my Portland, Oregon from here wearing off all the way down there?
I believe in and we could just turn it all off, right? Like, what new things do you ever really need to have that aren't a consumable?
Yeah. You're telling me. We were just having the debate about the AE2, and I'm like, bro, the AE1, just keep running it. I mean, it was great. Why do you need to make something new? That's right, because you have shareholders and investors, and you need to do something new to sell them that they don't need. But I'm with you on a lot of that stuff. What other industries where you really don't have to make anything new? Now, there's a lot in golf.
Sounds like stocks. I think we're in pretty good shape across the board for most things. Speakers, sound systems. Every Bluetooth, there's so many Bluetooth speakers and sound systems in the world.
Yes, we can all just live out our days with the Sonos systems.
Yeah, well, anything but the Sonos system. Shout out, one of the worst. Every Sonos I've ever bought has been a waste of money. It's eventually stopped working. Anyway, what else do we have on this list before we tap into agency life? SKIMS.
We had SKIMS. SKIMS.
Yeah, actually, weren't you going to go live from Kim K's inflatable?
Yeah, I'll be doing that later today. The inflatable doll up in Times Square.
That's very, very sceney. Good God. I don't know if I can participate in this one. I try to keep a really family-friendly vibe.
Indeed.
I know
Well,
you guys are a little more risque.
Oren, I know we were having the debate about male gaze versus not last week. Do you want to retract any of your
I know.
arguments?
I don't think this is for the male gaze. Honestly,
Okay.
like, what guy is walking by this and being like, "This is amazing"? I don't know. Maybe I'm out of touch with the goons, but like,
I mean, I
what-
don't think any guy is walking by saying it's amazing, but I think it would probably capture the attention of more guys than women.
Indeed.
I think it
Exactly.
captures the attention of women more, and who will know who it is quicker. It's just so weird, man. This is just so strange. I get it. They're like doing like LeBron level career success for keeping Kim relevant, but like, what is this? What is this doing? Who is buying what from this?
And so what's the kind of like broader reason for them doing this? They're launching swimwear and they want to make a splash for this. Is that right?
No pun intended. I guess like spring is upon us, so getting ahead of swimsuit season. I'm not sure.
But I think it was they dropped their.
Thank you for taking it
swimwear
off the screen. This
category.
goes against my Christian values.
I think they dropped swimwear, and so this is like one of a number of installations that they're doing, which I don't know.
You know what? I will say Kim has done a lot of great work in the criminal justice space. Kim has actually done a lot of great things with her life in general.
Love that that's the start of this. Yeah,
I am
Kim's done
not-
some really great work in the criminal justice system.
I don't want to slander Kim. It happens to be a passion point for me, but so I don't want to slander her. But anyway, I think she stays relevant. Let's just put it that way. I think we should hit Orka before we move on.
Yeah, I think I have an Orca here. One sec.
Yeah, you're the most.
Yeah, I think I had one at your place.
Oren's the most tapped in on Orka.
I don't want to go hunt through fridges, but this made the viral rounds a while ago. I think they had some trouble actually manufacturing it, but basically it's a clear water with caffeine, which is amazing, right? Water and caffeine is like what God intended you to drink, and some like light flavoring. The can is actually great, but this was like viral like a minute ago. This was viral like a year plus ago. I think I made a video about this like maybe at least like 18 months ago. And so they've had some trouble getting to market, I think, which happens. He's tweeting about it here. 4 failed production runs, but I still think obviously like has kind of potential in that category. Also because it's like a unique, again, caffeine and water is like basically you're drinking a coffee versus an energy drink, and I'm a huge fan of that in concept. But then they launched it with this launch video where they talk briefly about the product, and then they do what?
This is Orka, the energy drink that tastes like water. It's water with a bunch of caffeine and a tiny bit of flavor. You can find it on Amazon. Now, here's Corbin Blue listing every legally recognized road sign in the United States.
Stop. Yield. Speed. Crossroad. Sing zone.
Wow.
Okay.
And so I don't know.
Yeah.
That's one of those where I'm like, it's fun that they had a concept. Is it like that good? But at least they're trying. At least they're out in the market. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I thought I was maybe missing some reference with that guy in some kind of like cultural moment of the past. But it seems like maybe not. It's just a concept that they wanted to run with. Listen, I think it's interesting enough in that it got attention for them, and getting attention is better than not getting attention in 9.9 out of 10 cases. But yeah, what does it do for their, was there a better concept there? For sure. But I think it was fine.
And they've always had some weird stuff. Like they used to have this Bobby Shmurda thing on their website. You go to their Meet the Team, it's got like Ryan Russillo and like the Andreessen on there and stuff like that. They've got a little bit of an oddball feel, which I appreciate. I'm curious to see how that comes full circle when they really get in retail and like what actually resonates.
Yep. Yes, it'll be really interesting. Have you had the drink?
I have. I actually like it because again, anything that has like as little of anything else as possible. This is as close to coffee as you can get. I don't care about anything else. Just give me no calories, no sugar, and caffeine is like, or whatever else you're giving me is like exactly what I want. Like I was at Expo West this week. There's a lot of like protein sparkling water coming out. Right?
Yep.
Which is like, I was like, cool. Give me as little of anything else as humanly possible, and just give me the macro. Right. That is where everything is going.
Okay, so does this taste like water and a little hint of flavor?
Yeah, and like a hint of flavor.
Okay.
So
That's
sort of like a
interesting.
smartphone bar, like
But we'll see
like,
what I had one of the old ones, so I will see what this new formulation. Once we order off Amazon, I think they're in the DMs. I got to go hit them to get some stuff or something. Well, maybe I'll get it for all of us. Sent to all of us. We can do a taste test on the pod.
So I actually want to talk about this strategy that I think is interesting, and I did a video on it that did pretty well. So they did a 10-minute. They essentially introduced the product for 30 seconds and then did a 10-minute video. Rogue, the fitness barbell company, did this actually comparing to Nike, and what they did is like this time lapse of over, I don't know, hours of thousands of stress tests on the bar, and this one like breaks the Nike strength breaks after whatever 50,000 drops.
Speaking of the competition earlier, like they've gone so hard at Nike strength, and I think that's good for everybody involved.
Yeah, so there's a theme that we're talking about today. And then what this video ends up doing is it's a 10-minute long video. So Nike breaks within like the first 10 seconds. And then this video goes on for another 9.5 minutes. And it just shows like them. So Nike broke at 50,000 drops, 30,000 drops, and it's still going at 160,000. I thought this was like really interesting that it's, as I described it, it's like a really compelling, boring video in some way. And so I think it's just tapping into that, like, people are going, oh, wow, this has another 10 minutes. What's going on?
Yeah.
And it reminds me of that Leica video where they were like, hey, this is just our machinist working on the one steel part of the camera for like an hour and a half, like they had on Vimeo 10 years ago. Yes. But yeah, it's a good it's a good technique, and obviously some watch time. People scroll forward through it,
I was in on that point. I was in a luxury watch store. It was Along Son. It's like this German watch.
Classic Ashwinn.
And I'm in there.
Another luxury watch.
I am in there, and they have a decently big TV screen, and they have this video playing with just sound and no voiceover, and it is one of their watchmakers, kind of like using all of their tools to manufacture one part. It's like 43 minutes long, right? And I'm just like immersed in this. By the end of that, I was like, I want to buy whatever this watch is. And I'm sure every single watch manufacturer like has that, right? Every luxury watch manufacturer, they're manufacturing like this. But seeing that behind the scenes of how much precision engineering just goes into that one piece and showing that to your customer who is like so far removed from what this entire process looks like, I think is a great way to just like build that buy-in. Like we are so kind of like leaning into the craftsmanship here and want to make you feel that as the end customer.
And I wonder, and Jordan, you may have some context on this. So like Nike Strength came out. I was like, cool. I think it's like a licensing play is what it looks like. Like, sounds good. Yeah. Weights look good. Whatever it is. Rogue calling them out. Obviously, Rogue's being like, hey, we have this far superior product. I feel like people didn't even know Nike Strength existed. Rogue has such a strong name. It's one of those where I'm like, can you're kind of punching down like that to someone no one else knows exists? It's probably just a wildly... Letting all these people know that Nike Strength exists may not be the best plan, but curious on what your thoughts on that dynamic are, because I'm not close to it at all.
I'm with you. I think that it's just a shot to say, hey, there's this new cool kid on the corner. They've got all this great marketing and they're throwing professional athletes with it, but like we've been here and this is what we do. And I think it's a good play. The people who are like in it in that CrossFit kind of high rocks, cult. They do not take.
Every time you say high rocks, has to be high rocks. Just say
yeah. They don't take real kindly to those outsiders. So in all the comments, I saw most people like sort of laughing at the Nike thing, and then there was one other company like. I don't know, my video did pretty well on TikTok, and as you know how TikTok comments go, they were calling out some other company that's also like Rogue, and they were like, oh, curious, notice you didn't include so-and-so, who also, I guess, has all the street cred. But I think it's a good strategy.
I do want to say, on the high rocks, now we should do it, there's probably a naming episode we do at some point, but like I just love that idea of like 7 just massively jacked guys sitting around the table being like, well, how do we make the most aggressive name for our attempt at competing with CrossFit? And then ending with high rocks is like it's so great. Just to get that mental snapshot,
It is fascinating to watch it
All
shift.
Right. Agency pivot.
Yeah, let's jump into our agency talk. So I think first for context here, let's talk about, we all come from the background where we've worked with agencies. We've also run agencies. I'll kind of talk to myself, talk about my background, and then let Oren and Jordan kind of talk about their experience. So I've had a branding and design agency since 2018 called Forge. We work almost exclusively with CPG brands from the earliest stage, going from idea to launch. So we do their brand strategy, brand identity work, digital design and development work. So for a lot of their like Shopify storefronts. And there is really well kind of defined work that we do. And then there's work that we don't do, but can advise them on or send them to other partners. And so I think that's kind of some important context to give here. And then on the brand side, I've also hired and worked with a number of agencies, from SEO agencies to Amazon agencies, paid marketing agencies. And so I've been on both sides of the equation of what good and bad agencies look like, typically from a smaller scale. So that's kind of my experience there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jordan.
Go ahead. Okay. I want to give a quick founding definition, and I'll tell y'all. An ad agency is a business that creates and manages advertising campaigns for clients. They also handle other forms of marketing and promotion. Ad agencies are also known as creative agencies. So like for those of you who don't know, this can go as deep as you want. There can be people who run paid media, who run your digital traffic. They can be a digital agency, a social media agency, a copy agency. Like there are all kinds of agencies. As someone who was pretty green coming into this industry, 15, 20 years ago, I didn't even know agencies existed. And I see this a lot of times, like with people who are out there. So if you're some of the aspiring marketers, you may think that Nike or Hoka or whoever the company is, or Sweetgreen, for example, just does their ads. And there are actually, these big companies have hundreds of agencies that do all of the things. They like do the work. The people internally set the strategy and brief them and all that. But so yeah, I came trying to get this cool job at Nike years ago, and I was working at retail, and then I saw the people who were getting the jobs at Nike were actually coming from agencies. And so I went and joined a marketing agency as a brand ambassador, which is a real entry level that I always advise people who are trying to get into a big company. Be a brand ambassador, particularly if you're younger in your career. What happens is so when you go to let's say a big game, or Oren went to this expo yesterday, the people who are there with a lanyard and a t-shirt, like handing out flyers or getting you to register for something, sometimes they work directly for the company, but more often than not, they work for an ad agency, and they are or a creative or marketing agency, and they're representing that company as a person carrying out the goals and objectives that they might have. So I did that. I was a brand ambassador. I worked for Nike Football. I was traveling around the country, like doing 40-yard dash testing for athletes and doing events, popping up tents and tables and all kinds of stuff. And then eventually I got a job at Nike. And then at Nike, we worked with so many agencies, from small to big, but people who handle social media, the ads that you would see on television, the people who buy the billboards that you would see in like Times Square. And sometimes the agencies handle all of those, but a lot of times it's a bunch of different ones. So, and now after leaving, I work with some agencies to consult, and I'm doing some stuff in the golf space now as well. So kind of a breadth of experience there. Oren, how about what's your background there?
So like I started agency side as a designer at an agency, worked my way up to creative director at an agency, smaller, like 20, 30 person agency, I think at its height. And then we started our own that was marketing and basically product development, software development that still exists. And then we moved it purely to being software development because marketing agency is an odd business. But then now, having obviously hired tons of agencies throughout the career in different places, like I've been working with Van Group, as many people know, they're like a web design agency. And then also recently working a little bit as making content with Darkroom, who's like an up and coming agency in the ad and creative space, doing a lot of stuff for Amazon, for ad creative, for online. They do the ad creative stuff that I use for my valuable thing. And so have always just kind of been in and out in that, because I feel like when you're actually in the marketing game for real, you're either always working with agencies or you're always like engaged with them or you're like on the side of it. But it has, I think the impetus for this conversation was this conversation about RGA, which is a big agency. And Jordan, I'd love to hear your experience with them in a second. But they were basically saying, hey, they've been owned by a holding company and they bought themselves back or whatever it is. They went back independent. And to give some context there, what will happen is you grow an agency, you get bought by a big agency, right? You get a bunch of unique creative talent for your web design agency, your ad agency, your marketing agency. You get looked at by all these big guys, Saatchi, all these like larger folks will potentially like buy you out, right? And then there's holding companies and private equity that do the same thing. And then that, because when you grow your agency and you get to the size an RGA did, which I'm sure was 2,000 plus people at some point, you're basically there to be able to scale services for clients on like a massive level. And then to do that efficiently, that becomes a really good target for private equity and for these larger agencies to incorporate in, but then leaves you a little bit stranded creatively, right? And so you may not be on your mission. People may not like to work there as much. It may be not the way to serve your clients in a more shifting landscape. So they've gone independent, and it's been this conversation point and kind of inspired a bit of this combo. But Jordan, I'd love to hear, I know you've worked with RGA. Love to get some color on that.
Yeah, I mean, RGA is an agency of record. They have offices here in Portland, Oregon. You know, for most people, these big agencies like RGA or Wieden & Kennedy or Anomaly, they will have offices in LA, New York, in the States, generally one in the Bay Area because of all the big tech companies that are there. And then sometimes Chicago for, you know, companies like McDonald's and others who are based up there. And then lastly, Portland, Oregon, because Nike and Adidas are here, Columbia, North Face, now Lululemon and Under Armour's like footwear team, less ad focused. But RGA, yeah, they do digital. We worked with them from a digital standpoint primarily. And they've always been, you know, pretty clever. But yeah, I think the fascinating and challenging things, quite frankly, in a couple of years, I named my LLC Perseus Creative. I thought I was going to do a creative agency. I realized I don't really want to be in this business because like, how do you, so for those of you who don't know, the way that ad agencies make money, and I'm looking at the definition here, is typically charging a percentage of the ad spend or the overall budget. Anywhere from 15 to 20% is kind of standard. Obviously, agencies will try to make more than that. But let's say if you do $1 million ad, an agency would make 20% of that ish. So $200,000. And so the economics are just tough. You know, you're just cranking constantly. And I saw a lot like RGA and a lot of others like who service Nike. You can get really good. They demand a lot and they have big budgets, and that is great when the getting is good. But then when you get a new person who comes in as like a leader and they want to switch some stuff up, or you have one bad campaign and you've hired this whole staff of 10, 15, 20 people to serve this one client, and they say, oh, you know what, actually we want to get some proposals from some other agencies. We want to switch it up. You're not doing good enough. You lose millions of dollars of business really quickly. And so I can see how you get put in a tough position, and maybe you would welcome private equity money, but it's, you know, fascinating. And then there are some other announcements this week. I don't know, on the economics.
The laundry service one?
Yeah, Wasserman has bought laundry service years ago. So for those of you who don't know, you know, 24/7 Laundry Service does the social agency of record for Jordan Brand, for Gatorade. I worked with them a lot in Nike football, and they do great work.
Yeah, I remember watching them come up. They were like the social agency, the agency to watch, small, darling agency, and then like have gone through that trajectory to get to this work is something like I watched happen during the span of my career.
Yeah. So that was Danny Nunez in that picture. He's a guy who's a brand manager at Jordan Brand. We worked together years ago. He's now their chief creative officer and doing big work. And so, you know, a lot of times there's this intermingling, right? So Danny was on the client side. He was at Jordan Brand and then went over and joined the agency. Generally, the big companies don't want you poaching talent directly from them. And so, but there's a lot of intermingling. So a lot of these people are former, you know, big company, and you can go on the client side or the agency side. But they're now rolling all up into one. So Wasserman is an agency who represents talent. So they represent like, you know, Anthony Edwards, and they also represent the like famous actors or people. And so they're doing like entertainment, sport, digital, and they own 24/7 Laundry Service. And you can see how all that world is like starting to come together. There's Bima on the cover. So they do Amazon Music.
Go.
What a small world we're living in. And it's so you can just see how this kind of world is merging where like talent and I was thinking as you were talking, Warren, as creators, we kind of sit in the middle of this place too. A lot of times like an agency will reach out to us to try to hire us for something, and we'll have a contact at the brand side. And so it's fascinating to be on kind of both sides of this, and you see how it's all kind of coming together, which this Wasserman announcement was about.
And so I think this is an interesting point because where we're at with agencies is in such an odd place. I think all of us know, having worked with larger ones now at these companies, that everything moves so fast, like we've talked about in this pod. Content, ad strategy, social strategy, assets, culture, that having any kind of outsourced team, especially an outsourced team that has a lot of politics, makes it really hard to keep up. Not impossible. There's plenty of agencies that do good work, but it's tough. But then there's also this newer generation of when you talk about like having worked both with like Van and Darkroom, they're like smaller teams, 100-ish people, globally distributed. So they have, hey, that's cool. There's designers in Portugal and Spain. There's developers in Brazil. There's teams in US and Canada. They have, oh, you want someone who understands culture in this region? We actually have a specialist there in Paris or whatever. They're more decentralized. They're more nimble, and they're super on the ball. Like, we know exactly what's happening in Amazon ads tomorrow. There's no politics to fix this for your account. And also, it makes it really hard for larger agencies offering those same services to compete with these more nimble things. And so it's just a really interesting time where you have this combination of connections and like agencies that can get you in that way. You have all the things that are happening on the ground. You have like scaling, you have global, all these themes, and these big companies with all kinds of money and massive contracts trying to navigate it. It's really interesting.
It is. I mean, I'm looking at, Wieden & Kennedy is one of my favorite agencies. For those of you who don't know, they created Just Do It. And they've been the Nike agency of record for years. They did the recent Nike Super Bowl commercial for most every Nike commercial you can ever think of that you may or may not, that you may love. Wieden & Kennedy probably did it. And I've been fascinated in how they have been able to navigate this. I mean, they have offices in Portland, Amsterdam, New York, Tokyo, London, Shanghai, Delhi, Mumbai, my God. And I'm just fascinated. So let's talk about so that's a big one. How do you see the future of this, right? Where you work in this freelance economy, you have things like Fiverr that Ashwinn loves and is into. How do you navigate something like that? I will say I'll tell you this, from a big company standpoint, you don't have the ability to go hire every Fiverr person that you possibly can to get a copywriter here and a ad person there and a paid media spend there. You want one person to manage this thing, and it's less efficient, but you're so busy, you're tied up, and you need kind of that bigger agency model to say, hey, this is legit, and they've got all the paperwork and processes in the place. How do y'all see it, transitioning here as we're in this massive, rapid time of change?
I mean, one of the things that I think as I think about the difference between big agencies and small agencies and the pros and cons of both. And I always tell this to both agencies when you're evaluating a client. And if you are the client evaluating an agency, you're probably going to find the best fit with an agency team that's about the size of the team that you're working with on the client side. So if at Nike, you guys are 15 people on a new brand launch in whatever in US and Canada, you probably want an agency team that's about 15 people across account managers, designers, art directors, creative designers. Even if there are individual agencies made up of 2 or 3 people that could execute the work at a better quality, there is just going to be too much lost in terms of your team's expectations from how you want them to interact with you guys and the deliverables and the presentations and the decks and all that stuff. And the same is kind of inverse, right? If you're a really small team, you don't want to hire Collins or JKR to do your branding because it's just hey, we're 2 people launching a new business. So that's kind of one thing. I think there will always be demand for both of these sizes and scales of agencies. But I also think, just as I think about hiring agencies, and this is maybe more helpful for, marketing teams or kind of businesses here. I prefer to go to specialized agencies or agencies that have a very short list of things that they do, because it's kind of like going to the Cheesecake Factory, right? They sell everything on the menu, every single type of cuisine, but they're not particularly good at doing any one of those things. And a lot of people will just say, hey, I've launched a product, now I need to market it, so let me go hire a marketing agency. Wow, well, making organic social content is a very, very different skill set than doing email marketing, which is very, very different than doing SEO. But if you have no experience in doing any one of these things, an agency can very easily take your money, throw you on a $20K a month retainer and say, hey, we're going to do a managed service and do all of these things for you and just do a horrible job at every single one of them. And then you're going to be in an unfortunate place. So if I'm looking for email marketing, I want guys who just do email marketing and kind of live and breathe that stuff.
I would say this to agencies all the time, particularly at Nike, and you have the good privilege of being able to say, I would say they would all tell me oh, we can do soup to nuts, we can do everything for you, we can do, and I would just be like, what is your favorite thing to do? And I believe this in creatives as well. And I believe that if you're looking for work out there in the world and you're trying to develop a personal brand, this is the same for an individual as it is for a company. What do you love doing the most? Like, what are you going to crush? What are you going to do best? Because when you tell me you can do everything, and if we understand the principles of branding, what stands out in their mind? And I would always say, like, what is the thing that you love doing? Put a flag in the ground, because maybe this project is not the right one, but in 3 months, when I need that one thing, you're gonna now occupy space in my brain that I can come back to and go, oh, actually, we need this very specific social thing, the vertical video, whatever. We will come back to you for that. Or the collision of sport and culture at this moment in these places, or physical events, are incredible. I will give you one example. Coffee and Clothes is a guy who we literally started in one-to-one single image Instagram, and both were on the suggested users list in early days, and it would be like creative ways of showing off your coffee and clothes. And he turned that into an agency, and now he's doing stuff for like Dolce & Gabbana, Gucci, he does it for Nike, and you do like pop-up cool latte shops, and now it's like immersive and experiential, and that's evolved into an agency. It's very cool, but it started with like a pillar in the ground for being known for one thing.
Yeah, and I think having worked with Van Group, who just does websites, right? And so, in a lot of what I did with them is make videos about the websites, right? It's basically be like, hey, let's put this flag in the ground. So why they want to work with someone like me is like I can do breakdowns for things like that, where people now know, like I've done 4 or 5 videos about just cosmetic websites that they've done. Like hey, like this is if you want to have a big deal cosmetic website, that's like a beauty report that I wrote with them. Cool. Then like you can do it with this group. And so then, but it's funny because obviously like I made a video about the Rode website. Then we made a video about the Makeup by Mario website. More cosmetics companies come. Like it even goes niche down, right? Obviously we do other things there, but you'll playing that flag in the ground on one thing and being like, we are absolutely excellent at this is I do think a good plan in a time like of this nature. And if you do add something on later, 5 years into it, after you're already really well known and you add one thing, it's like you get it taken super credibly versus trying to be everything to everybody.
Yeah. And I think Van specifically has done a great job. Like this is the idea for every agency, right? If you're building just websites for really small upstart brands, you're going to be capped at how much work you can do, because then it becomes just a volume game, and then the quality of your work is probably going to go down. So you're always striving to go up market. But once you have enough of a portfolio in that space where it's like we live and breathe D2C, we know all of the insights like through and through from A to Z. We've done it at this scale of brands. Now we're going to go to the brand that's doing $30 million a year. Then we go to the brand that's doing $100 million a year. Great. Before you know it, you're going to have a client that's Aritzia who hires you for the next 5 years to like manage everything about their e-com. And I think Van has done particularly a very good job with that.
Well, and also because what you can do at that point is you're like, hey, it's data driven. So you're like, cool. When we take a website, we increase conversion rate 0.23%. So that means if you're doing 100K a month, you never want to do that. If you're doing 10 million a month, you're starting to do the math, being like, we need to do this immediately. And so there's like a lot of that where it becomes really, really impactful. And so what do y'all think in terms of the next few years? If you have a small agency now, if you wanted to start a marketing agency, what are those angles that might stand out?
I was going to try to tie this into Ashwinn. I would say, like, if you're trying to do, we all believe, we're pretty biased, but we all believe heavily in social. We all believe in the future of creators. We've talked about that at length. Ashwinn, you did a great video this week on how, and you really brought it to bear, where companies will light $500,000 on fire. But then when it comes to like engaging with creators, they would balk at spending $50,000, $100,000. And you made the case for $250,000 for a creator to be within a corporation. I'm just trying to merge that with your question, Oren. And I think like having creators sit at the table, be part of it, be on advisory boards, like I think would be one interesting facet of a social marketing and digital agency going forward, similar in the way that you've talked about working with the Van Group. So Ashwinn, I'd be curious some of your thoughts on if you believe those two ideas can come together.
So I think, yes, I think those ideas can come together. I think there's probably a lot more kind of like, I probably have to hammer that message 1,000 more times and have more people saying it for it to like really resonate. You know, probably like 6 years from now, the big companies will be like, oh yeah, we should pay creators a lot and so on. But I think to this point of what do you do if you are a small agency or small individual right now and you're trying to find this space to occupy? If I could go back in time, what I would tell myself or how I would think about this is, let me find a specific vertical to go into. Let me find a specific skill set to offer them, and let me marry the two. And so how I would think about this, if I'm 24 years old and I'm pretty decent at making content and I'm like, hey, I could do anything, what I would probably do is find like dermatology offices and med spas near me, because number one, no one who works at those places is going to be good at content. Number two, it's a hyper localized service. Number three, if I can bring them any form of leads, that's a high value customer, right? Like the LTV for the lifetime value for a new dermatology patient or a new dentist office patient or a med spa is going to be much, much higher than the lifetime value for like, hey, this new like chips brand that's like really hot or something. So I would go to those places and be like, hey, I can make you guys good content. Let me do some spec stuff. These guys have great budgets to pay. They'll pay you a $5,000 a month retainer or $10,000 a month retainer, depending on like what you can drive for them. And then just own that specific niche, just crush that niche and then expand from there. And the fear that everyone who's like an independent or like a really small agency has with doing this is they're like, well, we don't want to limit ourselves. We want to be able to do everything for anyone who comes in the door because we don't want to turn down work. And by doing that, I think more agencies kill themselves than if they went super niche and verticalized. They would just they would build a multi-million-dollar business just servicing one client with one skill set.
And this was 100% what happened with us when we started off. When we were like 6 to 10 people, we were doing marketing and we were doing product dev, hardware, software. And then it was like, cool. As much as we wanted to, we didn't want to turn the business. It's still a combo. Like the partners will still call me today being like, hey, can we just do marketing on this one project? And it's like, no, like the focus on the one thing. And now it's a 40-person contract engineering firm and good at one thing. But we couldn't scale to that 40 point trying to do everything. We couldn't break out of 12, right? And so it is interesting how much that focus allows you to scale. But then when you get to your 40, et cetera, and your niche down, you go, okay, we kind of need another niche. How like we've been in that point now for a few years. And it's really interesting. Also decide what you want. Like an agency is a good business model for a lot of creatives who want a more steady, like a steady thing that can like kind of navigate and move through the stuff. But you're not going to get that acquisition multiple of a brand. If you do, it's going to come with a lot of strings. It's an interesting place to play. What are some of y'all? Do you have any agency favorites that y'all like?
You know, from the branding standpoint, I really like Wedge Studio. They're based up in Canada. They first came across my radar when they did the Canada Dry rebrand. I thought that was excellently done. You have this kind of like legacy brand that is iconic, and they did not screw it up. They did a really good job with it. And then I've just kind of followed their work since. They've done work with Vacation. I think they've done Gia, if I'm not mistaken. So I really like their design sensibility. They kind of execute across a wide variety of styles. And yeah, they're a pretty small shop based up in Canada, but cool stuff from them.
Yeah. Jordan, anything pop out to you? Anyone do you want to?
Yeah, I'll shout out. I've mentioned Wideman Kennedy. We've mentioned Laundry Service, RGA, and others. This is Victory Group, who is a former Nike guy left, and there were a couple of like designers and creatives, and they started like making PowerPoint internal documents and decks for people. Y'all would be amazed at the amount of business that could come from just building good-looking internal decks. And they've evolved this business over the last like 10 years to be just incredible. They do the marketing for WNBA, the NBA, T-Mobile, all kinds of people, Netflix. They're based up in Canada, but they have offices now everywhere. So the guys and gals of Victory are doing great work. Love to see that.
I'm one of those annoying people who's obsessed with everything, and so I like have a big list of agencies. I just try to track what everyone's doing and like who's doing good work. But there's so many. Maybe we'll list some here in the bio. But like Mouthwash, Little Troop, Athletics, Baggy. There's like all these like cool like brands who really understand visual right now and who have been able to like have their own application for it. And so I do think it's like basically if you have like that aesthetic level of taste. There's such a big gap between like average and like top right now that there's so many of these like people that are can dominate by standing out in that niche.
Yeah.
Interesting topic. Any parting shots on agency here?
Yeah, let me just show you this one, man. We all are trying to like empower the youth and other people through like the internet, you know. And I just want you to know like how crazy the internet can be. This is Coffee and Clothes. My guy Ryan, Rye Guy on Instagram, started this as a Square Photos, and they have now become an agency that is connecting with people all over. They have Dolce & Gabbana, Neutrogena, Bulgari, Barbie, Amazon. Like they're doing all of these people all by simply taking a simple concept of coffee and clothes and the connection of it and the emerging trends that are happening on Instagram back in the day. And it's just it's really cool, y'all. The internet is big and powerful, and there are downsides to it, but there are a lot of upsides.
Yeah. Any last shout outs? Anything we need to do here before we wrap up?
Brand fathers need to go, and we needed to go in person. So y'all let us know where we want to be. We're talking with some brands and some events to show up. We could do live. We want to do retail runs, retail walkthroughs.
If we have anyone, listening here from an international or national tourism board, let us know. We'd be happy to come to your country, do it live from your embassy, local hotspots. We will do a breakdown of everything that your country has to offer.
Greenland, if you want, we could help with the campaign. Either way you want to go. You want to come in, you want to go out. You know what I'm saying? We're good. You want to stay out, we're fine either way. But yeah, appreciate y'all listening. If you have marketing confessionals, please drop them in the DMs and stuff. You should probably DM Ashwinn and Jordan. I think we discovered this week as we went through these, like, I don't actually read my DMs. And so if you have been DMing me, that's probably not going to go very well.
This week, y'all, I'm doing my first break. I'm about to turn social off for a week, do a vacation with
Really just DM me. I'm the most active in my DMs.
All right, y'all. Have a great week.